lot going on, of course, with, we had a few different options we were looking at as far as subjects we could discuss music industry related, but AI continues to be a major subject.
And this story really caught my attention because this is an issue that I've actually worked on personally in the past, protecting identities, protecting information. Of course, not to this extent of AI.
Yeah.
It's an aspect I didn't think about.
Well, yeah, nobody did until relatively recently. The way AI is impacting music. And by the way, this is not part of the main subject. I've got a story here that I want to look at, but involving Sony Music Group. But as kind of a side note, I don't know if I mentioned this at all on the show. I don't think so, but I posted on social media about this. The new Motley Crue song, Dogs of War, there's a website called the Metal Den that started this that is not necessarily reputable in terms of their sourcing and whatnot, but they started this, they put out this story claiming that the song, that Bob Rock, the producer on the song, actually created the song entirely out of AI, and that Motley Crue isn't even on the actual song. But I think that's just, I don't think that's true.
They're still tour and play.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like they're obscure.
Yeah, I don't think it's true, but it's something that this website put out there, and it's been circulating. There's all kinds of stories about. There's a story about now. I just saw that claiming that Scott Stapp, formerly of Creed, actually contributed vocals to the track, and that it's not really it's not really Vince Neil singing.
Heard that part.
Yeah, that's a new rumor about it. I don't think any of that's true.
You don't know.
But I mean, I understand the skepticism about Vince Neil's singing, but even if he's terrible, and he is, you can fix all that in the studio. You don't need to replace him with a different singer and manipulate it to sound like Vince Neil. But I did, Vince Neil takes a lot of crap for not being able to sing anymore, basically. And I'd shared out recently on social media a video I saw of a recent concert that they did where they opened with Primal Scream, which is my favorite Motley Crue song. And I click on the video and I'm like, oh, cool. And then Vince starts singing. And it's so bad. It's like he's not even singing. He's just kind of blurting out the words. It's so horrible. And it reminded me of years ago, and it bums me out because, one of my all-time favorite bands.
Sad. Years
ago, I saw Motley. It was the last time I had seen Motley Crue live. It was when they did a co-headlining tour with Kiss. And I was with Dan Randall of Dan Randall and the Randlettes. If you're a listener of Retro Spectrum Radio, you might be familiar with Dan. We went and saw them at what was it at that point? The Comcast Center in some people still call it Great Woods to this day. Anyway, but
you're dating yourself.
Out in Mansfield. But we went and saw them, and they played. There was a moment. See, when you're actually there live, it's much harder because it's live. So if someone hits a wrong note or something, you don't really necessarily notice it unless you go back later and watch it on somebody's YouTube video. But there's a moment during, it was Don't Go Away Mad. Another one of my favorites. You know the song?
Yeah.
Girl, don't go away mad. During the fast part at the end, you know how the song kind of changes at the end? And Vince Neil hit a note so sour that Dan and I actually looked at each other like, whoa, what was that? Anyway, so who knows? But I'm just saying, I don't think the rumor is true about that song being created with AI.
That's the thing about AI, though. It's so hard to know what's real and what's not real these days.
Well, there have been examples of things being put out that have fooled people.
Yeah.
That were AI generated.
Some scary stuff that could actually be used to harm people. So, yes. I mean, this technology is really invasive in many, many, many ways.
We talked on the show about that George Carlin special.
Yeah.
That
was completely AI created, of course, yes. Because he's passed away.
Yes.
If you weren't aware, AI is making the dead rise.
Even that, though, there's some skepticism because the people who created that claim that that the whole thing was AI generated, and there's some people who are saying there's no way AI wrote some of those jokes Because the thing is that George Carlin thing, it actually, I listened to the whole thing. Some of it's actually really good, but there's people, some people are saying that, that the people who created it aren't being completely honest when it wasn't entirely AI generated. It couldn't have been, because there's no way some of those jokes are much too clever and Carlin-esque, I dare say, to have actually been AI.
Well, you really can't say that for 100% certainty, because if you're training the AI with George Carlin, okay, right. Now write George Carlin jokes. You've trained the AI to follow his history, his cadence, his right. patterns. Then, yeah, why couldn't it potentially craft a Carlin-esque joke?
Right. Well, here is, this is a story that just popped up. This is from NBC News, NBCnews.com. Sony Music Group warns more than 700 companies against using its content to train AI. The company said songwriters and recording artists' rights, including copyrights, still need to be respected amid innovations in AI, which also, by the way, this relates to some of the conversation we were having earlier with Hope the Rapper about music and rights and royalties and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
AI has taken what was already a complex problem and exacerbated it quite a bit. So it says here, one of the biggest record labels in the world is issuing notices warning hundreds of companies not to train artificial intelligence models on its content without permission. By the way, the first thing that comes to mind when I read that is how, so is Sony going to start suing these companies? How are they even going to know? Like, how would you even be able to prove that a company is using your content specifically to train an AI model? I would assume it
would be encoded into the AI's content as far as its memory banks, if you will, for use of a generic terminology. Whatever's been utilized to help train it is going to be a part of its memory, a part of its collective computing.
I don't know.
It doesn't get erased out afterwards, I don't think.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Computer has to have something to draw its information from.
Right.
It doesn't pull it out of thin air. It has to have places to go to pull that information.
Right.
So if you're training it, you're feeding it all of this information, then it should, in theory, be encoded into its information. So then you could go back and say, hey, you were using George Thorogood to train this AI, or you were using this to try and train Kiss.
Yeah.
But if you're teaching the computer via other artists, then those artists become a part of its persona, if you will.
Yeah.
Again, trying to be generic on that. Then it not writing from those artists?
But how is Sony? If Sony is going to?
How's it going to know that they're using?
Yeah, and I'm not posing this question thinking that there's an answer out there. I'm actually posing this question saying I don't think there's an answer out there yet, because this is all so new. But how is Sony, and that's part of what makes it so fascinating to me, but how is Sony going to, how are they going to know? And then how does Sony then approach a company and say, we think you've been using our artists' work to train your, because it's all machine learning, to train your AI systems, and you have to prove to us that you're not doing that. And if you can't prove to us that you're not doing that, then we're going to sue you or something. Like how, I don't know how this is going to work.
You can't train AI without information. And if you're going to train it on music, how do you train music without using music to teach it what music is?
Right.
So yeah, this is it's like, where's that line on AI creation?
Yeah.
How do you tell when it's crossing over? I mean, I still think there's got to be something inside of the computer's memory banks itself. Some kind of something that you can go, yeah, that's in there and it's such and such artist. But how do you get into that? How do you know? Now, the NBC article, shows that Europe is ahead of us on this issue. Mm-hmm. The European Union's already created law to try and protect artists and kind of try and spell out what kind of content they're allowed to use to train these AI models or these AI systems. I don't know what you call them.
Yeah, models.
Yeah, I suppose that works.
Chris Poirier, our friend Crispy, the comedian, says, "Hi guys, can you get a restraining order on AI?"
I don't think so.
Yeah. Selfie. I'm sorry. Spelfie Ham said, "I wish there was an AI robot following Eleanor and I through BJ's, trying to play Marco Polo with me." Well, that sounds fun. It's not all bad.
So if an AI song, like if it's a singer, you're going to you're going to recognize the voice. So I suppose if you, like you're a bassist, you know, each artist has a certain tone or intonation that's unique unto themselves. I suppose if you pick up on something like that, then maybe you can try and say, oh, this is my, you've encroached on me. But
even then,
even that,
because even with human generated music, which it sounds strange to even say that, but even with human generated music, everybody's see, this is where it gets really complicated really fast. Everybody's influenced by artists who came before them. Right. So you take AI out of the equation, while human beings, and this is why human beings sue each other for things like copyright infringement and intellectual property and all of it, and plagiarism, because human beings are all influenced by other human beings, and every musician is influenced by all the music that came before them. So even that gets very dicey. Because we've done on Retro Spectrum Radio, we've done shows. Actually, we've done a bunch of them now where the theme has been musical plagiarism.
Yeah.
And Paul will play a song and play another song and say, okay, these two songs, one artist sued the other, and we all have to say, do we think the artist is guilty or not guilty of plagiarism? And I'm very lenient with that because I believe everybody was influenced by somebody else. So I'll usually say not guilty. Unless it's Led Zeppelin, the most plagiaristic musicians in history.
I think that Europe's really got something going here because they've passed a comprehensive law, and it requires these companies to make public, with sufficient details, a summary of the content that they used to train those models. So they have to give you this is what we used to train it.
Yeah.
They have to make it public.
Yeah.
That would be something that I think would be very good to do here in the United States to help protect artists here. That, you've got to make public what you're doing to train this stuff. So when music comes out of you, we know whether or not you're plagiarizing another artist. I guess there has to be a way to control what AI is doing, or it's just going to railroad artists, and artists aren't going to be making money off of their music at all. They're not going to be able to control their likeness. They're not going to be able to control their music.
On the other hand, though, and maybe consider this playing devil's advocate, because obviously I want to advocate for artists always. It's so hard to make money with music as it is. But on the other hand, I'm not sure, and on a practical sense, going back to, if you're a human, you're learning from everything you were influenced by, from all the music you've heard. So why then would it be any different for an AI model? Regardless, all music that is being created based on music that's already been created.
Because I think AI can sometimes it can be almost a carbon copy. And it has the ability to take in an artist and then spit it back out with different words. And it's the same artist, but it's reutilizing that. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
It's like Memorex in a way. It's taking it in and it's spitting it back out, making it sound a little different, but it's that artist. That's what people are worried about. That's what people are saying. I don't want to see AI using this one's voice or taking this one's specific guitar style and duplicating it into its own creation. It's not a human creation. It's a machine creation. Not that makes it bad,
right?
Machine creation. But when it's sucking in all that data and spitting it out, making it sound a little different, that's bad. That to me is plagiarism. That's plagiarism. And we can't let AI do that. And it's so hard to protect musicians as it is now. Artists have a very hard time getting paid for what they do. Everybody else makes money off of them.
Well, wait a minute, though.
So this is important.
But, so if an AI model learns an artist's style and, whether it be writing, how they write or production, whatever it is, their sound, their vibe, whatever it is. And then creates a work based on that style that sounds like that artist, but doesn't sound like any specific song by that artist, just sounds like their style. That's not plagiarism, is it? How can that be plagiarism if it creates an original work?
Taking their intellectual property and speaking it back out a slightly different.
But here's the problem, though. By that logic, you could say, like the band Greta Van Fleet, who sounds exactly a young, newer, they've been around for a little bit now, maybe a decade, but a newer band, younger band, that sounds exactly like, and I don't mean influenced by, I don't mean kind of like, that sounds exactly like Led Zeppelin. So should we call that plagiarism?
Does Led Zeppelin allow it?
Well, they have no choice because Greta Van Fleet. See, here's the thing. This is where it gets tricky,
So they
right?
sound like them, but
they're all original songs. They don't plagiarize any of Zeppelin's songs. They sound exactly like Led Zeppelin. If you put on a Greta Van Fleet song and you didn't know who it was, and someone told you, hey, I found an unreleased Led Zeppelin track that never came out, and they played it for you, you would think it was Led Zeppelin. I mean, I don't know if you've ever listened to Greta Van Fleet, but they sound exactly like Led Zeppelin.
But I think you're dirtying my pool because you're mixing apples with oranges. You're taking human beings that are here in the now, that are doing one specific thing that the other person does have the option to maybe go to court or have a claim that it's tangible that they can deal with. AI is a completely different animal. AI is taking everything in and spitting out that it's not it's to me it's vastly different when you're taking everybody else's information and you're using it to create something. You're stealing all these people's data, all these people's personality information, and then trying to spit it back out as your own. It's kind of like having somebody else take the test for you, and then you put your name on it, and here's your own.
But how is that any different from how a human being operates?
A human being is one individual entity that a person can actually see, touch, take to court. We can control this. AI is something that is international, worldwide. If you don't control it at the start, you cannot control it at the other end. At least with a human being, I have the ability to put a stop to that human being. I can take them to court. I can do something with them.
But if I'm a human being, which I am, by the way, for anyone who doesn't know, there's a rumor that I'm some sort of android. Yeah, I shouldn't even go there.
Stop
it.
It.
That gets very comcomplicated. But if I, as a human being, if I write a song, what informs me and my ability to create music is all the music that I've heard over the course of my life.
That's different.
Why though?
Because I think it's different because, well, for one thing, you're a human being. You're absorbing information from multiple entities, and you're doing that as a human differently. With the AI system, individuals are with intent loading this computer with your specifics, with the intent of it spitting out something in return that is similar to or identical to. That's entirely different. This is intentional. I'm going to use my computer to steal every ounce of what makes you and spit it back out to the world in every way that I possibly can. And the horse is out of the barn. You can't control that. So we have to have it on the front end that we control what is allowed to be fed into these AI systems, right? Because there's a difference there. Human beings absorb everything around them and spit that back out in their own way. But if I intentionally load a computer with all of you, with the intent of it spitting you back out, but for me, without you. See what I'm saying here?
But if that computer spits something out that is a completely original work, in other words, if you...
But it's not original.
If you train the AI model to absorb all of this work that's already been created, but then to create an original work... I'm
going to correct you there. You cannot say a computer absorbs.
Well, however you want to say
You absorb information and spit it back out a certain way. But a computer is fed, and that's the only information it has to go by, is what it's fed.
Sure. Well, that's also true for all of us. So, I mean, if I'm...
No.
Hey,
I don't think so.
Well, if I'm a kid riding in a car and one of my parents is playing the radio, they're feeding me whatever that station is playing. I don't control the radio. The adult in the car controls the radio.
No,
How's that any
nice
different?
try. Red herring. I mean, seriously, you're a human being taking information in multiple facets. Nobody's in control of that. Give me a break. You're a human. You're getting info. You're getting your senses all at the same time. Your nose is smelling something. Your ears are hearing something. There's so many influences around you that conflate or compound what it is that's in your environment. This is the difference. This is a box, if you will, that is given card of information. Then that's all the information it gets. And I, as a human being, intentionally feed that in. And I intentionally tell it, give it to me with something new. I am totally ripping you off.
But the something new part, though, isn't that what changes that?
But that's not new when I'm doing it off of all of you. I take your body of work and go, hey, I twisted it a bit, and here, this is new. So I get to have it, and you can go pound sand. That's no, it's not. It's nope.
Here's the thing. I agree with you in principle, but there's also the practical application of all of this, and that's what I'm skeptical about.
Practical.
In other words, how does Sony pursue?
Don't mix practical with legal.
Well, how does Sony? Well, legally, fine. How does Sony follow up on their threat? They're threatening these companies.
They will have to look for if they hear their artist's voice coming out. That would be an easy one, I guess. But and that's the thing. Europe is addressing this issue. We haven't addressed this issue. In Europe, the law is very specific. I've been sitting here reading some of the law that was passed in the European Union. So this is across the entire European Union, the EU, in that they're required to keep 100% up to date all the information and documentation that they use to teach these AI models. They're not allowed. It says they have to supply this information without prejudice to the need to observe and protect intellectual property rights and confidential business information or trade secrets in accordance with the union, yada, yada, yada. They have to give them everything. They've got to keep records and turn over everything that they've used to train that AI. And when I look at your AI records and see that you've got you all over the place, you didn't approve that, then yes, I get to step in and say, hey, you're ripping off my artist. So I get to do that.
Yeah.
We need something like that here in the United States to protect American artists so they're not ripped off by these companies. And that's where you come into the laws that control how much you get to control your own image and your own work.
Yeah.
And that's what I meant by talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
There's a writer here in New Hampshire. Oh my gosh.
It was Salinger, wasn't it?
Salinger, yes. Yeah. Salinger. The family wanted to control the identity.
Yeah.
And depending on when you live in the world, depends on how much you can control your identity. Here in New Hampshire,
likeness and intellectual property.
So if you die in New Hampshire, you live in New Hampshire, you're only allowed to control your identity until you're dead. And then your family has no control over it. If you go to California, your family gets to control your identity for 100 years, or essentially trying to be one generation.
Yeah.
So that's where this stuff comes in too. Now we're making the situation more compounded because now we have AI. So now I could theoretically feed Salinger books into AI and come out with a new Salinger book because I gave it all of Salinger's works to train.
Right.
So isn't that theft?
I don't know. I mean, because again, what if J.D. Salinger is your favorite author and you decide I'm going to write a book based on the style of writing of J.D. Salinger?
That's you writing a book based on the style of J.D. Salinger, not you feeding a computer all of his books and then say, hey, spit me out a new book.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the thing. That's why we have to start at the beginning of where they're training these things and control that if we're going to have any kind of hope of protecting the artists.
Yeah. Little bit more to this. It says Sony Music Group, which owns well-known labels as Columbia, RCA, and Epic, has started sending formal letters to more than 700 generative AI companies. There's a lot of companies doing this, and streaming platforms, prohibiting them from mining text or data, web scraping, or otherwise using any SMG content without explicit licensing agreements. That covers a wide variety of content, including audio recordings, musical compositions, including lyrics, cover artwork, and metadata, according to a copy of the letter obtained by NBC News. In its letter, SMG said it recognizes the significant potential and advancement of AI. It wrote, quote, however, unauthorized use of SMG content in the trading, development, or commercialization of AI systems deprives SMG companies and SMG talent of control over and appropriate compensation for the users of SMG content, conflicts with the normal exploitation of those works, unreasonably prejudices our legitimate interests, and infringes our intellectual property and other rights, unquote. Such activity, quote, conflicts with the normal exploitation of these works, unreasonably prejudices our legitimate interests, and infringes our intellectual property and other rights, unquote. Asked for comment, a spokesperson for SMG referred NBC News to a declaration the company posted online on Thursday. It wrote in the post, quote, evolutions in technology have frequently shifted the course of creative industries. AI will likely continue that long-standing trend. However, that innovation must ensure that songwriters and recording artists' rights, including copyrights, are respected, unquote. The letter asks companies to either confirm that they have not used SMG content without permission, or if they have, to provide details about how the content was used in AI training.
And I think that's excellent that they literally went to them and said, listen, you need to tell us if you've done this or not.
But, a lot of these companies are going to say, pound sand, we don't have to tell you anything.
Not necessarily, because depending on the state they're in, there may be laws that what's the word I'm looking for? Compel them.
Yeah.
To release the information.
There may be, but
and there have already been issues. There's ones here that there has been incidences of AI used, and when it was found out, it was forced to be removed. So we're already seeing it happen. Drake released tailor-made freestyle that has an IP-generated voice of the late rapper Tupac Shakur.
Yeah.
Now, but that track ended up being removed from Drake's X and his Instagram accounts after Shakur's estate threatened to sue him.
Yeah. We do know, history tells us that government is generally very poor at keeping up with technology.
True.
Yeah, it says here, while regulators protecting human-made work still lag in the U.S., regulations rather, many companies have begun to negotiate their own agreements around the licensing of their content for AI model training. Some have also sued AI companies, claiming their AI models were trained on copyrighted materials. Some tracks that appear to use AI-generated vocals have already popped up online. Last year, a viral song called Heart on My Sleeve, created by an anonymous musician who goes by Ghostwriter, featured vocals that sound like those of Drake and The Weeknd. Yeah, I remember that. It was quickly taken down from streaming services because of the copyright claim by Universal Music Group. Right. In April, Drake released Tailor-Made Freestyle. Yep, you talked about that.
I was talking about that. Yep.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, at least something has been getting done in the fact that there was a recent hearing where the CEO of Warner Music Group, Robert, how do you say his name? Connect?
I'm not sure.
It's Kyncl. For our listeners, I apologize for not pronouncing it correctly, where he's asking for the United States to put laws in place to protect artists. I like his quote. He said, quote, our fundamental position on AI is simple. Everyone should have the right to decide how their own name, likeness, and voice is used. He said in preparing his remarks, these characteristics are the very foundation of our individuality. They are not simply data to be taken and used by others. Each person's identity must not be used in ways that they would never condone or wish to participate in. And that, you think about deepfakes. Mm-hmm. And that's taking somebody else's will away from them, as they're not consenting to how they're being used in this computer model. So we do need to and we need to hurry up, because like you said, we're pretty bad at keeping up with technology, because this is going to undermine artists everywhere. And we can't have that. We can't have that. We can't allow artists don't make a lot as is. I mean, let's talk about the fact that musicians really get very little of the money that they generate, right? The venue does, Their manager does. Everybody else gets a piece of the pie. By the time it gets down to the individual artists, it's not usually a whole heck of a lot. Most artists make most of their money off of their merchandise.
Right.
But if you're taking what little I'm making on my music and you're taking that and feeding it into a computer, and now that computer is spitting out songs that you're going to make money on, but it's my likeness. It's my style. It's my music. I think that's theft. I really think that's theft.
Well, oh, by the way, Spelfie said in the chat room the first time she heard Greta Van Fleet, she thought it was Led Zeppelin. Yeah. Well, it'll be so interesting to see where all this goes. And of course, technology does often really alter the course of the music industry.
Well, like your favorite band, Kiss.
Mm-hmm.
There's Mini Kiss, but Kiss approves of Mini Kiss, right?
Yeah.
Or there's some kind of a thing there. This is an individual that Kiss can look at and say, yeah, we approve, or yeah, we don't like you. Don't do this anymore. We can sue you. You can't do that when you're used to train an entire system.
By the way, you mentioned deep fakes, and before we get to a break and bring in our next guests, do you remember this? A classic moment from Matt Connarton Unleashed. Matt Connarton Unleashed. Who's this?
Hey, Matt, this is actually you calling in. Thanks for taking my call.
Wow. This is wonderful. I always dreamt of a day where I'd get to talk to myself.
I'm curious if you remembered to pick up toilet paper or if you plan to do it on the way home. We needed to wipe our little bottom.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. I did not know that we were out, but I'm really glad that I'm really glad that I told me.
Our little bottom can get a bit messy. Sometimes it feels like we use too much of that dang stuff.
Uh-huh.
Toilet paper, I mean.
Right. Toilet paper. I've never actually called
How is John Hopwood?
Oh, John
I've always thought of him as a father figure, mostly because he always tries to spank my little bottom. Right. I never let him, but he keeps asking.
This must be an AI thing. Yes, he does. How did I know that?
I just mostly wanted to say that I am very nice and very much a sweet little boy. Mm-hmm. And even though my bottom gets a bit messy, I am a nice guy and someone that people love.
Aw, that's very nice. Thank you.
Oh, and one more thing. Hopwood looks like an 86-year-old toddler, and he makes us mush up bananas for him for lunch.
Well, yes. Yes, that is...
Goodbye, Matt. See you at home in the mirror.
Thank you. Yes. Well, very excited. I'll tell you what, that's a first for me. I've never gotten to speak to myself. Now, is it possible that someone... So anyway, yeah, that was...
I'm sure that wasn't like a time... I mean, you guys have that time machine Friday night.
That's
Do you
true.
Like play with it or something?
That's true. No, we should give him a plug. That's actually from Not Even a Show.
Yes.
Our friend Chris James, one of my favorite Canadians. Not Even a Show. That was...
favorite pranksters.
Yes, that happened live on my show, but that was him calling my show with a prank.
Which was hysterical.
We love Chris. Yeah, that was really that was pretty cool. But I did also upload it to my YouTube channel as well. But Spelfie said in the chat room, I say please and thank you when I talk to AI. I hope when AI takes over the world, maybe if I'm polite, they will remember that and spare me because I was nice to them.
Maybe.
You know,
the war against the machine.
You know what's funny about that, though? Honestly, and this is true, when I'm using Chat GPT and I ask it to do something for me, I do have a tendency to type please, just out of habit because I'm unfailingly polite.
This and I believe. Because I know, actually.
Because if I'm writing an email to someone, I'm going to say please if I'm asking them to do something for me. I do just out of habit. I do that with Chat GPT, even though I'm communicating with a.
I do that with Alexa.
Do you?
Sometimes.
I think I've heard you do that. Yeah, I think I've heard you do that.
Hey, that's what I was raised.
Right.
I knew my please and thank yous.
Yes, exactly. Well, anyway, it's an interesting subject, and it will be fascinating to. Watch as we move forward into this brave new world of AI, which in some ways isn't that as new as people perceive it to be, but that's okay. But it will be very interesting.